Big news coming out of Virginia, and this could have major impact on gun owners across the entire state. Now, a judge has just made it clear that his order blocking Virginia's new assault weapons ban and magazine ban doesn't just apply to one county, it applies to the entire state. So, what does this actually mean? Let's break it down. So, Virginia just passed a new law banning many commonly owned semi-automatic firearms and certain magazines. Now, the law was signed by Governor Abigail Spanberger, but almost immediately it was challenged in court by the NRA. The case is called Santolla versus Katz. Now, the NRA argues that these bans violate Article 1, Section 13 of the Virginia Constitution. That's the part of the state constitution that protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Their argument is that the government cannot simply just ban firearms that law-abiding citizens commonly own. So on June 25th, both sides went to court to argue their case. And a few days later, on June the 29th, Judge Jeffrey Campbell issued what's called a preliminary injunction. Now, if you've never heard of that term before, here's what it means. A preliminary injunction is a temporary court order that stops a law from being enforced while the lawsuit continues. Think of it as like pressing pause on a game or a movie or something. The judge is not making a final decision about whether the law is constitutional. Instead, he's saying the law should not be enforced until the courts have more time to fully examine the case. Now, after the ruling, another disagreement came up. Both sides couldn't agree on one very important question. And the question was, did this injunction only apply in the county where the lawsuit was filed, or did it apply across the entire Commonwealth of Virginia? And that is a huge difference, obviously. If it only applied locally, people in other parts of Virginia could still potentially face enforcement of the ban. But Judge Campbell answered that question in a new letter opinion issued on July the 7th, and he made it crystal clear. His injunction applies statewide. That means law enforcement agencies throughout Virginia, not just in Washington County, are prohibited from enforcing these firearm and magazine bans while this injunction is in effect. And the order also applies to Commonwealth's attorneys, meaning prosecutors are included as well. In other words, the judge isn't telling just one sheriff's office to stop. He is telling every law enforcement agency and every prosecutor across Virginia that these bans cannot be enforced while this injunction is in place. Now, there is one important date to remember. Although the judge ruled that the injunction applies statewide, he moved the effective date to July 21st of 2026. Not because he changed his mind. He said he wanted enough time for court officials to notify every law enforcement agency and every Commonwealth's attorney's office across Virginia so everyone clearly understands that this injunction applies statewide. Now, the goal is to avoid confusion and make sure every agency receives the same instructions before the order officially takes effect. So what does this mean for gun owners? Well, right now, assuming nothing changes before July 21st, Virginia's new assault firearm and magazine bans cannot be enforced anywhere in the state while the preliminary injunction remains in effect. But that also does not mean that the lawsuit is over. In fact, it's far from it. This is only an early stage of the legal battle. The courts still have to decide whether these bans ultimately violate the Virginia Constitution. That final decision could take months or even longer, unfortunately. And this case is also significant beyond just Virginia. Courts across the country are continuing to wrestle with similar firearms bans, especially after the U.S. Supreme Court's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision changed how Second Amendment cases are now analyzed. Now, because of that, many people will be watching closely to see how this lawsuit develops. So what do you think? Do you believe Judge Campbell made the right decision by blocking enforcement statewide while the case moves forward? I want to know what you think in the comment section below. And if you want updates on this case and other Second Amendment news, make sure you are subscribed to this channel so you do not miss future videos. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.